The first known Stark is the historic founder, Brandon the Builder, the legend who built Winterfell and the Wall in the north thousands of years before the story even begins. But this family tree isn't going to start with him. The complete lineage written in the world of Ice and Fire only begins with Benjen Stark, and no, not Ned's brother Benjen. There have been other known Starks before Benjen, like Torrhen Stark, the last king in the north, the Stark who bent his knee to Aegon the Conqueror and chose not to fight him and his dragons, but George Martin doesn't connect them to this almost complete family tree. This Benjen Stark was born sometime after Aegon's conquest, which was 1 AC, and before the Dance of Dragons Civil War, which was 129 AC. Benjen married a woman named Lysa Locke, and had two sons with her, Rickon and Bernard Stark. Rickon married Gillian Glover, and Bernard married Margaret Karstark. House Karstark are descendants of House Stark, which explains the resemblance in their names. 1,000 years ago, Carlin Stark, a younger Stark brother, took care of a rebel lord and was rewarded his own lands by his father. He built the castle Carhold and became the founder of House Karstark. Bernard and Margaret had three sons, Benjen, Brandon, and Elric. It isn't stated if any of the brothers got married and had children, but it seems at least one of them did. Rickon and Gillian had one son, Cregan Stark. His third marriage was with Lynera Stark, so one of Bernard and Margaret's children could have been Lynera's father or grandfather, or could even be a random cousin, who knows. Together they had 5 children, Jonel, Edric, Lyanna, Barthagon, and Brandon Stark. Cregan Stark was Lord of Winterfell during the Dance of Dragons. He was known to be an exceptionally skilled swordsman, and even marched south to King's Landing to aid in the war. He became Hand of the King during Aegon III's reign, and even held court for a short 6 days, since Aegon III was only 11 years old at the time. But what I remember him by is the Stark that complicated the hell out of this video, by getting married 3 times and having more kids each time. His first 2 marriages were with Ara Nori and Alysanne Blackwood. During his marriage with Ara Nori, they had one son, Rickon Stark. With Alysanne Blackwood, who he met during his time in King's Landing, they popped out all daughters, Sarah, Alice, Rhea, and Maria. Rickon married Jane Manderly and had 2 daughters, Serena and Sansa Stark. Both daughters ended up marrying their uncles. Serena married Edric and Sansa Jonel, nicknamed Jonel One Eye. His brother Brandon married his distant relative Alice Karstark. Brandon also had some fun with Wyaella Fenn, having their bastard Lionel Snow. Together with Alice, Brandon had 3 kids, Rodwell, Arsa, and Baron Stark. Baron married Laura of House Royce, and really populated the Starks. They had 7 children. During this time, the Wild Greyjoys were out causing trouble and had to be dealt with by Baron Stark and his men. He died in this battle, and there was a small fight for succession within the Stark family. Laura Royce and her children kept the seat in their line. Rodrick, one of their sons, lived a very different life than the other Starks. He was the youngest child, so he had more freedom than most nobles. He spent time as a sellsword for the Second Sons, and married a woman from the mountain clans named Arya Flint, who Arya Stark is probably named after. I bring him up only because his nickname was Wandering Wolf, one of the coolest nicknames in the series. But back to the tree. Rodrick and Arya had 2 daughters, Lyara and Branda Stark. Lyara ended up marrying Rickard Stark, a name you all should know well. And yes, finally, a picture to go with the names. Rickard is the father of Brandon, Eddard or Ned, Lyanna, and Benjen Stark. Rickard and his children's story is some of the more tragic stories. His eldest son Brandon and daughter Lyanna shared a lot of similar traits. They're referred to being wolf-blooded, meaning they have short tempers and they're courageous. Their nicknames were the Wild Wolf and the She-Wolf, while Ned had the nickname of the Quiet Wolf. He was smaller and a lot more shy than his charismatic older brother Brandon. He spent a lot of his childhood in the Eyrie and was fostered by the Lord Jon Arryn, along with Robert Baratheon. They grew up like brothers and saw Jon Arryn as a second father. Robert was to marry Lyanna, while Brandon was betrothed to Catelyn Tully. When Peter Baelish found out, he challenged Brandon to a duel for Catelyn Tully, who he was madly in love with. Brandon accepted and easily beat Peter, and even let him live after Catelyn asked to spare him, since they grew up together and saw him as a little brother. But we know Brandon never did marry Catelyn. While on the way to Riverrun, he hears that his sister Lyanna has been kidnapped by Rhaegar Targaryen and his men, who at this time was already married with 2 children. This isn't the first time Rhaegar has done something to Lyanna to anger Brandon. After winning the tourney at Harrenhal, Rhaegar declares Lyanna Queen of Love and Beauty, a tradition that tourney winners do to declare their love for someone. Rhaegar was already married to Elia Martell for years, and Brandon Stark saw this as an insult and had to be held down before he did something crazy. Which he did after hearing her apparent abduction by Rhaegar. He rode with his men to King's Landing for justice, but instead were all arrested by the Mad King Aerys II. Aerys called for their fathers to come to King's Landing. When they did, Rickard Stark had to speak for their charges of his son plotting Rhaegar's murder and chose a trial by combat. Aerys accepted, choosing fire as his champion. Rickard was burned alive inside of his armor, while Brandon watched with a noose around his neck and a sword just out of reach, causing him to strangle himself by reaching for the sword. The Mad King wasn't even done. He ordered Jon Arryn to send the heads of Robert and Ned. Instead, together, they started a rebellion that removed the Targaryens from the throne. After Brandon's death, Ned married Catelyn and gained Tully's support during the war. Lyanna Stark was found dead in Dorne by Ned after trying to rescue her at the Tower of Joy. Ned and Catelyn had Robb during the war, and Ned returned home after the victory with a baby Jon Snow, claiming it to be his bastard son. By this time, Benjen, who always respected and understood the importance of the Night's Watch, became a brother after Ned had an heir. Ned and Cat had 4 more children: Sansa, Arya, Bran, named after his uncle, and Rickon. Reading through some of the comments of my Targaryen family tree video, a lot of you wanted to zoom out at the end of the video, so I made sure to add one for this. Thanks for watching.